Now, I mentioned before the break that the economy is going better than almost everyone feared, I mean, me included. But we do still have 1.5 million Australians needing the JobKeeper handout to stay in work. And that huge handout is one reason our debt is exploding. Got to ask, how much of a problem is that? Well, not much of a problem right now, while the official interest rates are close to zero and expected to stay that way for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, who knows? How long will that last? And then what? The Institute of Public Affairs has today put out a report on the debt we face and the potential trouble. I'm joined by Daniel Wild, the IPA's Director of Research. Daniel, always good to talk to you, mate. Your report shows us that the government's debt is soaring, and what struck me, of course, it's not just soaring over the last year, but the last decade and more. When, according to your report, will that become a problem?
That's right, Andrew. It's been soaring for some time now. It can't just be blamed on the coronavirus spending that's been required under JobKeeper and JobSeeker. Over the last 15 years or so, really since the global financial crisis, we know that debt per person has increased by over tenfold, from about $3,000 for every Australian to about $30,000 for every Australian. So every man, woman and child in this country right now will be required to pay at least $30,000 of that debt back in the future. But what's even more worrying, Andrew, is what this means for our interest payments on debt. It's not just the debt that you've accumulated, but it's all the interest that's been racked up on that. And what we've estimated is that by the year 2030, our interest payments on debt alone will come to about $64 billion each year. Now, to put that into context, that's more than what we spend on education every year. It's more than what we spend on defence every year. And it's more than what we spend on the age pension every year. And it would mean that our interest payments on debt, not the total debt, just the interest payments on debt, every year would be our third highest spending item behind only health and our total income support for seniors. And of course, it's going to be our children and our grandchildren and the next generation of Australians who are going to be saddled with this debt, and they'll have to pay it back either with higher taxes or through less spending on things like schools, roads and hospitals.
But Daniel, I had a look at your report, and your calculations are predicated on interest rates rising between now and then, which seems to me odds on. It can hardly go any lower. What are the chances that interest rates do rise? How much do they have to rise for this scenario to play out?
Well, the chances of interest rate rising sometime in the next decade are very high, Andrew. The Reserve Bank has indicated that interest rates will stay low for the next couple of years, but just look at the historical record. You can't bank on interest rates being low. Now, we've modelled several different scenarios, and the scenario of 5 or 6% annual interest rates is the scenario where the $60 billion interest pays out. But even a small increase in interest rates or even a small decrease in forecast economic growth can have dramatically significant impacts on how fast our debt accumulates. But the other part of this, Andrew, is there's an argument, well, OK, interest rates are low, we don't need to worry about debt, and they might stay low for a long time. But we need to look at what are we actually spending on. Sure, if interest rates are low and you're borrowing money and investing in something productive for the future, that might be worthwhile. You've got to get a mortgage to buy a house. You've got to get a loan to start a business and employ people. That makes sense. But what are we spending the money on? We're spending, over $1 billion a year on the ABC. We're spending billions of dollars on top of that for universities to teach our children about identity politics and radical climate action. We're spending billions of dollars in subsidies on renewable energy to give us high electricity prices. So this spending is not in the main going towards productive assets, productive investments that are going to create more wealth, more opportunities for our future. And that's really the concern.
Yeah, look, an interest rate rise of 5 to 6% over the next decade, I think would have to be a little bit unlucky. But I think, mate, we keep getting these short, sharp shocks or big shocks that change our thinking about what the future really is. We've seen a couple of them in the last 15 years. Who knows? And I don't know that it's safe to have the huge debt that's sort of hostage to fortune. Daniel Wild, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Andrew, always a pleasure. Thank you.